Ready, Tony? Welcome, fellow Rotarians and guests. Appreciate that everybody's going to be hopefully accommodating. We are starting a couple minutes early due to a remarkably full agenda. So I appreciate everybody being here with us today. Let us begin with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I'd like to now welcome up Rotarian Chuck Hyatt, who will facilitate today's invocation.
Lord God, we pause in your presence at this moment to thank you for the gifts that you've given to us and for the opportunity to be back together face to face as Rotarians. We thank you for this turning of the Rotary year and recognize that the theme of service above self is close to your heart as well. We thank you for those who throughout this past year, when leading was not easy, have done it with grace and courage, confidence, and the ability to help us all move forward. We thank you today for those who will grace this podium. We recognize that they all have significant titles, but as servant leaders, we know them as Jason and Tony and Angie and our Rotarian of the Year and our guest speaker, Dusty. For these things, we are grateful and praise your name. Amen.
Chuck, thank you very much. In the interest, I just love the sound of a crowded room. I'm reminded of last year at this time when Jesse was turning the reins over to myself. It was over video. So here we are in a crowded room. If I can get everybody's attention, thank you. You know you're about done when the crowd wants you to shoot off. I would like to now take a moment and ask all of our guests. I know there are plenty today. If all of our guests could please stand and so we can recognize you, please. If you're a guest of Downtown Rotary. All right, thank you. Thank you for joining us today. I would also like to thank our greeters. We have greeters in the back, and those greeters come every week here to welcome all of you to Downtown Rotary. We appreciate your time. We appreciate your commitment. Thank you so much. We'll now begin with Rotary business. And over the years, we have made the annual meeting its own standalone program. That is not the case today. We decided as a team, a leadership team, that we would cover the Rotary business as part of the curriculum, but also include an important program because there's a lot in our society that we need to discuss. And I'm delighted to have Congressman Dusty Johnson as our program. So we'll try to work through the actual agenda for the annual meeting here quickly with you. At the beginning of this Rotary year, this last Rotary year, we really prioritized what we were focused on. And it began with people. And our objective was to grow, despite the challenges that COVID was bringing us. Our objective was to grow and enhance the most influential and engaged service club in Sioux Falls, comprised of leaders who create lasting impact in the community. Our values: fellowship, integrity, diversity, service, and leadership. We immediately reached out to Cindy Peterson, who took charge of this particular pillar of our priorities, and she led with great valor throughout the entire year. It's been an honor serving alongside her. She put together a team of committed Rotarians, and despite the challenges, our club grew by 28 to over 300 members. And that led the district by a ways and was one of the best results numerically and from a percentage standpoint of any Rotary club in the world. So please give a round of applause to Cindy Peterson. In addition to that, we had one of the most remarkable years in terms of sponsorships. We had so many Rotarians that stepped up and sponsored their friends, their colleagues, business partners in the community. And I want to thank all of you for your commitment to this club and the commitment to the work that we are doing. Programming. I remember in March of last year when COVID was coming down and the executive team of the board was trying to figure out what in the world are we going to do to keep this club engaged. And we immediately said we have to dial up our programming and we have to make sure it is relevant. And we all stepped up. A lot of Rotarians in this room stepped up to help guide the club through its emphasis on bringing forward programming that was not only interesting, but relevant and challenging. And Tony Knorr, who was president-elect, who is sitting right here, led that effort, was part of the effort, the team that took command of this effort in early April and then took the reins of programming July 1 of last year. And what was the outcome? We moved to a moderated conversation style format. I think it's been a while since we've seen a style of programming where we had a PowerPoint presentation and we had speakers up at the podium talking about what it was that they were covering. Instead, we went to a moderated conversation, which hopefully you have all enjoyed for over the last year. We've had regular and frequent coverage in the media. It's not unusual to have the Argus Leader here, Kelloland, Dakota News Now. It's not unusual to have them here. PBS covers our programming on a very regular basis on Facebook Live. And it has brought over 250,000 Facebook and YouTube views since the early days of the pandemic. So our reach is beyond just this room. Our reach has now expanded to across the globe. I think we've had 4 to 5 continents where we've seen people tune into our programming. And this is in no large part due to the efforts of Tony, his team, the programming committee that has met very regularly, sometimes weekly, but certainly on a monthly cadence for the last 15 months. So please give a round of applause to Tony and the team. Purpose. A number of years ago, through leadership of the Downtown Rotary Club, we sought out our one relevant it. And we all know we ended up partnering early last year in 2020 with the city in the mayor's effort to lead mentoring and make mentoring part of the regular vernacular in our city. And Tony Burke took command of this. He led the search for the Sioux 52 or what the relevant it would be, took command of it after he was done being president. He still stepped up and has put, we joke that he's almost like a full-time employee, although not an employee of the Downtown Rotary Club. So Tony's efforts have been outstanding. And mentorship, getting mentors in place and mentees in place in a virtual environment was no doubt a remarkable challenge. But Tony, with his team, a committee of multiple committees, stepped up and met regularly to overcome those challenges, achieved successful results, and a few of those are highlighted up here. Rotary Mentoring Moment. In partnership with Dakota News Now, on a monthly basis, you find clips of mentor-mentee relationships. And that impact has been reached across this region. And Downtown Rotary and mentoring are now used in the same sentences in almost every corner of this community and across this region. Virtual mentoring with the Sioux Falls School District. Not an easy task to achieve. There's a lot of red tape for good and bad reasons, but mainly good, that you have to cut through in order to put together something like this. And Tony Burke, in partnership with the Sioux Falls School District, put in place a virtual mentoring program or initiative with the Sioux Falls School District. We have 38 Sioux 52 business partners, 22, an increase of 22 from 6/30 of 2020, and 294 mentors, an increase of 114 in the last year. We have a ways to go to achieve our goal in partnership with the city, but despite the challenges, we have moved the ball in a very meaningful way. down a very long field. So please join me in giving Tony Burke a round of applause for his work and the team. When we dialed in these three pillars, and more to come on that, and as we look to the future, it was focus that we attended to, and we think that these three areas have really helped us to not only advance the club, but advance the things that we value as a club. Board members play a very meaningful part of the advancement of our efforts. And over the last year, we started off meeting as an executive team, and the board members were roped in frequently on a weekly basis. So the role of the board took a huge and important lift for what they probably signed on when they agreed to serve on the Downtown Rotary Board. It took a lot of time, it took a lot of courage, it took a lot of creative thought. But one thing stood out, particularly amongst the two that are retiring, was their unwavering commitment to this club and to our efforts to advance the club's initiatives. I'd like to give a round of applause to Sandy Frentz and Jesse Schmidt for their commitment to Downtown Rotary, its three pillars, and just frankly being the two decent people we all know. Please. With retiring board members, we also move into a slate of two new members and election of two people who are going to add an additional term. Laura Mitchell, Joel Sylvester, Eric Elfson, and Anita Wetch. You can see Laura and Joel for their first terms and Eric and Anita for their second term. The board has unanimously approved and has suggested that we bring forward this slate of members to the board of directors. With that, I would like somebody to step forward and offer up a motion to accept these boards. Thank you, Tom. Do I have a second? Chuck, thank you for the second. All in favor of accepting the slate to the board of directors, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Thank you. Any opposed? Thank you. All right. For the numbers, and I recognize we'd be happy to forward over the budget of this next fiscal year. We are not trying to hide this information. But I will speak, we will forward this out to anybody that may ask. The board did approve the budget. I will cover a couple items, and I don't know if I have a laser on this, but I don't know. And I admit I can hardly read my own budget in front of me, so I'm going to pull out my spectacles here and try to guide us through. Our revenue in last year was $120,000. We are projecting that our revenue going into this next fiscal year will be $144,000. That increase of $24,000 is a result of our projection that membership is going to increase. As you saw, membership increased over the last fiscal year, but a lot of that came in the second half. And we believe that our momentum is such that we will be adding members early, regular, and often throughout the fiscal year. So we are budgeting $144,000 in revenue. Our total expenses, operating expenses, we're estimating going to sit at around $145,000. That's a small deficit of about $1,000. I do want to highlight that this is a very conservative budget. We also are going to be investing some dollars in budgeting to invest some dollars in some important initiatives, namely the Rotary Foundation gift and investment in Sioux 52. We are going to continue to push forward on that. And you may be asking, okay, why are you guys operating with a deficit? Well, our bank balance and our liquidity position as a club is sitting at about $155,000. And Kurt Lauenbeck, who is our treasurer and who keeps us disciplined and rolls his eyes at all sorts of things and ideas that we bring forward, I want you all to know is attentive to this budget and wants to ensure everybody that we will get the books balanced. But we have $155,000 as a club in liquidity, and we are using the momentum we have in both membership and purpose in Sioux 52 and some other things to really invest in this club. And we have no doubt that that the books will get balanced as we move throughout the year. It is a priority. So we're gonna take that $155,000 and not blow it. We are going to invest, and we will end this next Rotary year in a solid financial position, as I know the board and the executive committee are committed to doing that. I'm going to ask if there are any questions to the budget, but I'd be happy to forward the budget out to the club membership at the end of this meeting. Okay. Thank you. Special thanks. A lot of people to thank. And I know I'm going to miss some. But the names on here really stood out over the course of the last year for the countless hours that they spent on phone calls, Zoom calls, meetings with program opportunities, and just honestly, just kind of keeping us disciplined as we move throughout the year. The board and committees, we've always had committees as a club, but we really brought more robust nature to the committees throughout the year. And I sat on a lot of those meetings, and I can tell you the engagement of those committee members and our board members is something that this club can be proud of. At the end, I want to really honestly call out our executive director, Angie Kuiper. Angie and I met on a weekly basis. We set our time. I think it was last June that we were going to meet every Thursday morning at 8:30. She was better at keeping that discipline than me. But we met, I would say, I don't know, probably 100 times over the course of the year. And I think we all owe her a deep set of gratitude for her commitment to this club, her example, the humor she brings to every engagement, because my God, she just really delivers for this club. So please give Angie a round of applause. Now, the moment we've all been waiting for. Rotarian of the Year, the Larry Ritz Award. This individual is a quiet, humble leader. He's been serving as a Rotarian for over 20 years. He served as president of this club. He led the charge to establish the Rotary Centennial Plaza, lead sponsor of the Arc of Dreams. In addition to serving as president of Downtown Rotary, he has been active participant in cultivating engagement in the club through music, invocation, strategic planning, and relevant programming. Through the pandemic, this Rotarian has been a collaborative leader, assisting to pivot the club for continued engagement. He was also noted recently in a Rotary mentoring moment with Mayor Paul Tenhaken, who shared how Joel has mentored him both personally and professionally. Joel Dykstra, who was nominated and selected as Rotarian of the Year, was also involved with recruiting both myself and the next president, Tony Knorr. And I know I speak for many others in this room, including myself, that I consider Joel Dykstra to be a mentor to me. He is one of the most direct people I know, but every time he is, I laugh, and I'm like, you're right, Joel. Once again, you're right. I'd like to now welcome up Joel Dykstra, Rotarian of the Year.
Well, thank you all very much. Thank you, Jason, for this and for those kind words. You know, I feel very honored to receive this, and I appreciate it. And express my gratitude to the club. But mostly, I just want to take a moment and talk about what an honor it is to be a member of this club. The way that the next generation of leadership has stepped up, the transformation of this club from what we recognized a number of years ago, and what it is today, and the vibrant leadership and direction that we all enjoy. And I think we could see that from the presentation this morning. So I just want to thank our new leaders, and Tony, as you're coming in as the incoming president, to carry on that vision. I just know that the club is in incredibly good hands, and I'm just really proud to be here. Thank you.
The engagement with Joel, whether that's professionally, personally, or in Rotary business, is always a joy. And again, I speak for others, and just thanking him for his leadership and his commitment and mentorship. Well, oh yeah, I gotta move them. Ah, what I do, Dan? Okay. Well, you can see the president for next year will be Tony Knorr and President-elect Cindy Peterson. I want to thank this club. I want to thank its board. I want to thank the rest of the executive team for the commitment over the last year. We started this year thinking this would be a daunting task. Our annual meeting last year was done virtually in one of the conference rooms at ClickRain via video. And we were at that time wondering, are we ever going to get back in person? And we sought out to navigate this club through what was the pandemic, but end the year in a better position and a better situation than what we found it. And here we are, a full room, and it's just been a great privilege. I've been a professional in this community now for 20 years, and I say so unequivocally. This has been the greatest professional experience of my 20 years here in Sioux Falls for a host of reasons, but namely because of the friendships that I've developed with so many of you, with the board, with the committees that I served alongside. This has been a true joy, and I'm never going to forget it. And I want to thank all of you for giving me the opportunity to be with you and to lead. Thank you. Think 3D, who has just been a magnificent partner. Thank you, everybody. Who has just been a magnificent partner over this last year. We asked them to put together a year in review. And it's remarkably flattering and remarkably humbling, but just a job well done. So I'm going to ask Dan and his team over there at Think 3D to bring up the year in review, and then we'll get rid of me and bring up Tony.
Can you look at yourself in the mirror and say, that is what I accomplished during this pandemic, is I was there for my fellow humans. And those are the folks that I need to serve. And that's really the attitude that I think has kept us going on a day-to-day basis. When one of us was not having a great day, we had a team that kind of lifted us up. And that's what it's really come down to is the healthcare teams have really kind of picked each other up, because we have to be unified, because no one asked us and no one asked you to be part of this pandemic. We're part of it. And so what are you going to do? You might be having a down day, but who's going to pick you up? Because you got to be there. And that's really what we've been focused on, what I've learned. It's not about me, it's about the people I work with, and they're great people.
it really gets me excited, and I'm so proud to be a Rotarian right now for us to be leading in these conversations. And one of the things that, I always want to point out is that, as the Downtown Rotary, we are one of the largest collections of leaders and influencers in the region, and what we are able to do is immense. And so I think it's important that we be able to bring these conversations to all our Rotarians because of the part that we play. And it's also very important that the community at large gets access to these folks. And I think it's important that people know how accessible they are.
My name is Jason Herrboldt, President of the Rotary Club of Downtown Sioux Falls. It is my great privilege to serve as this club's president. Our goals this year are ambitious as we tackle our mentoring initiative and strive to bring programming that is relevant to the moment we are in. Over the last 4 months, we have started our meetings with the four-way test. First, is it the truth? Second, is it fair to all concerned? Third, does it build goodwill and better friendships? Fourth, will it be beneficial to all concerned?
Remember, what we've got here is a healthcare crisis, not necessarily an economic crisis. If we can fix the healthcare crisis, the economics will come back. So a lot of this is going to depend on how quickly the states are able to safely open back up.
And I guess what gives me optimism is the first two. I do think COVID-19 has reminded us how critically important employment and families are. A lot of us were spending more time with our families in March, April, and May than we otherwise would have. And I think that reminded us of, the sacred connection that's there.
Try to give people a little bit of grace and recognize that maybe they're going through something you have no idea that they're dealing with. And then when we get through this and we try to operate in grace, that there will be a revelation of who we really are as a country and as a people. And that my hope is that we'll be better. We'll be much better than we've been in a long time. And that's what my hope is when I get up in the morning.
But we found so much here to be appreciated. We decided that we would seek out the good in this state, in its people, in its places, and our lives have been so enriched by being part of this incredible state.
But in terms of building and implementing, South Dakota is an open book, and the people here are good-natured and have their hearts in the right place, so that great things can be accomplished.
As we join here today in person or virtually, and as we seek out our own motivations, let us consider the real possibility that can come in a healthy mentor-mentee relationship. Perhaps we have our own laureate in our midst right here in the Sioux Falls region.
And we made sure that I was ready to pay it forward, but because of what you showed me, I'm able now to show that to others. So it then reciprocates and really begins to have the impact I know that we all can be proud of.
What 2020 has taught us more than anything is that we need each other. We need to lift up one another. We need to share our experiences with each other. But most importantly, we need to seek out to understand one another. That is mentorship.
All right. I'd like to now welcome up Tony Knorr. So I think everybody knows Tony and I are both B schoolers from the Armour Menno area and are the same age. We both have 4 kids, and our jobs are remarkably similar. And despite that, I consider Tony one of my closest friends, and that's developed over the course of this last year. Tony was a partner, not just president-elect. He was a partner throughout the last year. I joke that I spent as much time on the phone or in person with him as I do many of the people that I lead in my own organization. And I want you all to know, for obvious reasons, but the club is in remarkably good hands, and I am just excited to see what work Tony can do over the course of this next year. So, Tony, first is your badge. And I'm not going to try to pin you, but here is your pin.
Thank you.
Good luck.
I'm going to Well, thank you, Jason. It's been an honor, an absolute honor. And I would echo those comments in terms of the experience over the last 15 months alongside this gentleman and so many of you. We've learned a lot, but I believe we're coming out of it as a stronger club and as a stronger community. So excited for the opportunity and want to recognize Jason. As you can see, the year that was, it was quite a year. And I give this guy a lot of credit for helping navigate the ship as we moved along. So Jason, your past president pin. And then also to hang in your office, Jason, the recognition of the year that has been. Thank you again.
And he's way taller than me. So.
All right, we will get to Dusty and Joel, but I have a few comments I'd just like to share. Joel, congratulations. You're so deserving. I, too, consider you a mentor. I wouldn't be standing here if you hadn't invited me 7 years ago, and I'll be forever grateful for that invitation, so thank you. Wasn't that video amazing? Just a trip down memory lane, so thank you to Think 3D team and everybody else involved. I'd ask Tommy, and Dan, can you move to slide number 11? We tell our employees at First Premier Bank that the ones that are just joining us now, they didn't join us for what we've done in the past. They joined us for what we're going to do in the future. And I would say the same thing to you as Rotarians. As much as we'll celebrate the past, we're going to look forward with anticipation to the future. And you leave a couple bankers in charge. It's not a surprise that you end up with an acronym of PPP. So that's what we have, and that's what we're going to move forward with. And really, intentionally, we start with people. That's you, the members, and echo what Jason shared. Relationships that have been formed throughout this club help move our community forward, and I think we play such an important role in this community. Fellowship, integrity, diversity, service, and leadership. Just looking around this room, I can see that emanating out of this group. So thank you for that. For 100+ years, we have been a place where important conversations are happening, and that's what we want to continue to happen. We're going to set a goal, or we have set a goal of 30 net new members. So we're excited about the progress we've made, but our community is growing, and we want to continue to invite high quality, influential leaders in our community to join us in this journey. And that's what we're going to continue to do. Laura Mitchell is going to chair our membership committee. So thank you, Laura. Jen Hazing will take on engagement and lead that committee. We're going to stand back up our junior Rotarian program after a year off. Thank you to Kayla Etram for taking that on, and we're excited to have the next generation come and share with us this school year. I would also share in my appreciation of the rock that Angie Kuiper is and has been for our. It takes a lot to keep a couple bankers in line, and she did it over this past year, and excited to work alongside you. Next, programming. Cindy Peterson is going to lead that effort and chair that effort, and we are excited to continue to bring timely and relevant programming opportunities to our members, and we're going to use the influence that you have and the access that our club affords us to go after speakers and to bring things to you timely. So finally, purpose, the last P for purpose, one that is you've heard weave through Jason and my comments, but we want to help all of our Rotarians and broader community find their individual calling through mentoring and adding value to others. And we're excited to continue to partner with the mayor, the city of Sioux Falls, and other stakeholders to really build a community of mentoring. I don't have to tell you, this is a pretty darn special place we call home, but we know we have opportunities to take the knowledge that's in this room and transfer that to the next generation and to others that will indefinitely rise up. So by June 30th, 2022, we want to take that 38 business partners and increase that to 200. We also want to partner and have had conversations with the mayor about ensuring we have capacity and sustainability for this initiative moving forward. John Wooden, the late Hall of Fame college basketball coach who led the UCLA Bruins to 10 NCAA national championships, summed up mentoring this way: while I made my living as a coach, I have lived my life to be a mentor and to be mentored constantly. Everything in this world has been passed down. Every piece of knowledge is something that has been shared by someone else. If you understand it as I do, mentoring becomes your true legacy. It is the greatest inheritance you can give to others. It is why you get up every day to teach and to be taught. And I thought that was so fitting to share with this group. And like John Wooden and our own Joel Dykstra, you understand the importance of mentoring, and many of you are engaged in that. And whether it's formal or informal, you're doing it, and we encourage you and support you along the way, so that we're sending that elevator back down to others to bring them along with us. With that, I'll invite Congressman Johnson and Joel to the stage, and just share that I am truly honored for the opportunity to serve alongside the board as your president for the coming year, and just look forward to a great year together. So thank you, and I'll now turn it over to Joel and Congressman Johnson.
Not very often you get a warm-up act like that, right?
No, very good.
Yeah. So I'm going to cut through. I'm going to skip all the softballs.
Yeah. Now, can I make an introduction first?
I think you should.
So I have my wife here today, which is very exciting. Now, my wife is very busy. She's the CEO of a wealth management and employer benefits firm in Mitchell. And as such, she often, almost always turns down my invitations to come travel the state with me. She is here today because Steve Stotts invited her. Just as an acknowledgement of his unmatched influence with my wife, Steve, could you ask her to increase my allowance? That would be nice, your next task. But would you please thank my wife for her service as well? So stand up and wave that one. So sorry to interrupt, but she's delightful, and although I respect you, she's an even better kisser than you are, so I thought we should take some time to acknowledge that.
Since I know you don't have any personal experience, I'm a little concerned about who you've been talking to.
Sure, right. Good to see Vicky here as well. Yes.
So, it's interesting. We've known each other for a long time. It's an interesting conversation to have here. You're a familiar face to Downtown Rotary, and you know a lot of these people very well, which is one of the things that we cherish about South Dakota. So now that you have survived 30 months in the U.S. House of Representatives, having gotten to Washington, having gotten into Congress, on the strength of that longevity, tell me what would be the one thing about Congress that you found when you actually got there that surprised you the most?
I'll cheat and give you two answers, one good and one negative. The first one, the good, is that the quality of the human being is much better than I expected. You sort of assume they're all knuckleheads, and indeed there are a lot of knuckleheads, but they're also, honestly, some of the most accomplished Americans in the country have given up that success in their previous chosen field of endeavor to come mess around in politics. And it's remarkable. So that would be the positive. The negative would be, Joel, all of the incentives in the system reward bad behavior, all of them. And, if you talk like an idiot, you're going to get more Twitter followers, and you're going to be able to raise more money, and you will be booked on cable news more. And to me, everybody in D.C. should endeavor to treat the job like Dennis Dugard treated the job of governor. And I don't even know that he had any Twitter followers when he was done. So it would be the most boring Twitter feed around. But it is good for the governance of the state. And so that, I think, was a surprise, that everything tells you to misbehave.
So then in your role, you are South Dakota's one and only member of the U.S. Congress. You are one out of 435 people. What can you do? What is your goal with the seat that you have? How do you work that role?
Well, I think it starts with an acknowledgement that there are really two different, I call them games, but they're not really games, but there are two different games being played. One is at the top of the surface, and this is saying outlandish things and raising the money and getting on cable news. And that grabs so much of the citizen attention, and too much of my colleagues as well. But beneath that, there's actual real work getting done. If I forced all of you in this room to name, collectively to work together to name members of the U.S. House, you couldn't together get 30 out of 435. And I would submit to you that the names you can name are more likely to be the knuckleheads. The other 400, by the way, are actually working relatively hard despite the incentives, and are getting a fair amount done underneath that static at the top. And that's certainly what I endeavor to do. And I would tell you that every week there are bills that pass out of the U.S. House with a couple hundred Democrat votes and a couple hundred Republican votes. They don't get a lot of attention, but that's indeed the kind of progress you have to run a country. So I think it comes down to hard work, just the same as it does to be successful in Crooks or Sioux Falls or Fulton or Mitchell.
So what have you got done?
I was told there would be no hard questions.
That wasn't one of those.
Yeah, no, that's right. Well, okay, I'll brag. Just give me 30 seconds of bragging. But the University of Virginia put together an analysis in 15 different issue areas for the 116th Congress. That's the 2-year period of the last 2 years ago. And 15 different areas like criminal justice or international affairs or defense policy. And they identified the most effective Republican and the most effective Democrat in actually getting legislation and amendments and policy advanced. And for the 116th Congress, out of 435 members, the most effective Republican, I guess, in agricultural policy was South Dakota's member of the House. And I don't say that, well, I don't say that just to brag, although it feels awesome. But I say it so people have some sense that there are things that get done. And a lot of them, admittedly, are meat and potato issues, Joel. They don't grab the 6 o'clock news. But we've had dates where people can access forage crops, cover crop under a prevent plant environment. We have advanced reduce the regulatory environment for people to be able to expand in the small meat packing industry. We need more of that. We hadn't been able to secure favorable trade deals for South Dakota products that otherwise would not have gotten into USMCA. And much of it is drudgery. It's not very exciting. But if you are going to have this incredible American entrepreneurial spirit and private sector work, you've got to have people in Congress who are willing to get out of the way, even if that is largely drudgery.
So there's been a change at the other end of Pennsylvania Avenue since you've been in office. What's your assessment of the Biden administration so far?
Well, I took our 16-year-old Max to the inaugural with me, and it was an incredible experience. I mean, it was really a ton of fun. And the president, he might have said the word unity 30 times. And I was hopeful. I was not a supporter of Joe Biden, but of course I want him to be successful because I want America to be successful. And I know that it is literally true in a political environment where the Democrats control the House and the Senate and the White House, that we will only get good things done for this country if Joe Biden is a part of it and is a leader of those efforts. And so I was hopeful. I've grown a bit cynical. I mean, I don't want to be partisan, but I have told the White House directly that I have not seen very many concessions in the spirit of bipartisanship and common ground finding. Now, listen, I remain obviously willing to do good with anybody. And just this morning, I talked to Secretary Marty Walsh. He's the Secretary of Labor. And of course, that was my message to him, too. It wasn't, you dirty SOB. I hate you. I hate all people from Boston, and I hate all Democrats. That's not what I said. I said, Mr. Secretary, let's do some stuff together. And I am still hopeful, Joel, that maybe the early political messaging out of the White House was more to sort of satiate their folks, and that as this administration matures, that maybe we're going to find a way to do things together.
Well, the first thing that they were able to accomplish was the pandemic relief bill, whatever its official title was. How do you feel about that with the hindsight of a few months? That was a bill that how did you vote on that bill, and how do you feel about what was in it? What have we learned that was in it that we didn't know at the time? Or
yeah, I voted no, and it was unfortunate that the first 4 pandemic relief bills were bipartisan. They had been put together by Democrats or Republicans on the very first hour, sitting down together and saying, what do we need to do together? And as a result, they passed with overwhelming bipartisan majorities. I mean, the CARES Act, the big one, that passed out of the U.S. Senate 97-0. I would submit to you that when Ted Cruz and Bernie Sanders are holding hands, we are in a weird time. But the package that passed in March was not put together that way. And you said with the benefit of hindsight, but even in real time, I tried to and I was one of the 4 negotiators that put together the 4th package, and which was a surreal experience. But I'm not opposed to pandemic relief. The problem with the March bill, Joel, was that even in real time, I think we knew that it was overlarge. 85% of the emergency school funding won't be spent until 2023 or later. Moody's Analytics, don't take my word for it, Moody's, independent third party, said that state and local governments got quadruple in that package what they needed to deal with COVID. And those numbers were known at the time we voted. And so to me, I voted no, and I would love to see those unspent funds gathered up and to have something meaningful done with them, something new, rather than put these states and localities in a position of hurriedly trying to spend the money with maybe things that meet the letter of the law, but perhaps aren't strictly needed to move the country forward. We're $30 trillion in debt. You heard Dennis Dugard gasp when I said that. We should make sure that we are doing everything we can to try to reclaim these dollars and be good stewards of them.
I think I remember you in a campaign presentation at some point quoting a number, and I'm take this off the top of my head, but I think you said that your sons were each responsible for $85,000 of federal debt, at that time, 2.5 years ago. Have you done that math lately?
It's much worse. At the time, I think we would have been perhaps 24 trillion in debt. We're closer to 30 now. And the real problem is I think you can deal with the raw number itself. I think the bigger concern is that all the trend lines are in the wrong direction. This country can handle a debt load. We can't handle an annual deficit that only seems to grow larger. And on the chance that anybody thinks I'm being a partisan, I'm not. Both parties, I think, have abdicated their responsibility, some worse than others, but many in Washington have abdicated their responsibility to be good stewards, even when that would make them politically unpopular.
So the next big thing appears to be the infrastructure bill, or maybe two, and it's estimated to cost somewhere between $1 trillion and $6 trillion, depending on which bills you're looking at. Is that good for South Dakota? How much of that are we going to get?
Well, it depends on what infrastructure bill we're talking about. Now, to give you some context, the infrastructure bill, the highway bill that passed 6 years ago, this was a pretty good piece of bipartisan work, overwhelmingly bipartisan, passed the House and the Senate, Republican, Democrat votes. That was $300 billion over 5 years. Largest highway bill in American history, $300 billion over 5 years. The president's proposal was 7 times larger than that. If we're talking about that one, it would be very, very bad. If we're talking about the one that I have introduced, it will be perfect. I suspect that neither Dusty Johnson nor Joe Biden are going to get their plans put into law. But we have something that is on the lower end of the $1 trillion to $6 trillion area that you mentioned. And I think, provided we can keep that bipartisan proposal from getting a lot worse, on the whole, it would be good for the country. There are lots of things that I don't like, but I try not to let perfect be the enemy of the good. And I have been married for more than 20 years. I'm aware of compromise. And thank you, dear, for giving me a third of the loaf when I earn it. And I don't know if I would be yes or no on this bipartisan Senate package, but it's much better than the proposals we were talking about a few months ago.
So let's just a little bit focus on the outside. How do you think the Biden foreign policy is going? Just 4 countries in particular: China, Russia, Iran, Afghanistan.
Oh, is that all?
Well, we could add Cuba.
Yeah. Well, I think it's a mixed bag. Afghanistan is a lose-lose. We see how quickly the Taliban is seizing area in Afghanistan. It's tragic. But I'm not convinced that staying there, the troop numbers were down to something between 2,500 and 3,000, so it wasn't a large force. It was enough in general to keep the Taliban areas, and the Afghan central government areas, but it was not a permanent solution. And so I just, in the same way that I didn't critically criticize President Trump's pullout plan, I'm not going to publicly criticize Biden's. I mean, I think it's a bad situation. And I think there's some things we can do better going forward, but it is a mess. Afghanistan is a mess, and we will be dealing with this for a long time. I give the administration a little bit better marks in Russia. I think the last administration had a bit of a blind spot with Russia. Russia's not our friends at all. They're an adversary who spent a lot of money every single day trying to destabilize American institutions. A recent analysis found that of the 150 largest misinformation campaigns, think fake news on Facebook, they were overwhelmingly put together by the Russians or Russian state-affiliated actors. And of course, you know in your hearts the overwhelming target. They targeted some of the Ukraine, but overwhelmingly they targeted America. They want us fighting with one another. They want the people on the right side of this room fighting with the left side. They want the people with one skin tone fighting with the others of a different skin tone. They love it when Americans are picking at each other. And overwhelmingly, the stuff that your crazy cousin Larry shares on Facebook is trash that is put together by the Russians, designed in a lab to make us angry at one another. And I think this administration is beginning to call out Russia, although I'd like to see more real, hard, tangible reactions. And then with China, I think I would give President Biden a very poor grade. I think China is, do you know that 1 out of 5 North American companies last year claimed that China or a Chinese affiliated actor had stolen their intellectual property? China is a serious adversary to this country, and in fact, for the rest of our lives, which may not seem like a lot for Tom Simmons, but it's a lot for me. The rest of our lives, that will be the dominant foreign policy relationship or lack of a relationship that will define this globe. And I think we need to lean in a little bit more. We need to be more thoughtful. I would close by saying this. We need to be more thoughtful in how we decouple key American interests like food and medicine from China. I'm a free trader, but my passion for free trade really stops at giving our enemies power over our food.
Maybe related here is the issue of cyber security. Mm-hmm. One, what can Congress do to address vulnerabilities in vital industries or government services? And what should the policy be towards paying the ransom?
Well, we're not taking any of this seriously enough. I would submit to you that if we had Russia come in and actually physically destroy half of the East Coast fuel supply, that we would view that as an act of war. But when they hack into a system to the Colonial Pipeline and bring down literally half of the Eastern Seaboard's fuel supply, we sort of read the headline and there's almost a collective shrug from the citizenry. They brought down a third of the nation's meat processing capacity when they brought down JBS. Mm-hmm. And we simply are not hearing this as a clarion call to have a national commitment toward cybersecurity. And in fact, I have mentioned to the White House, and I'm going to continue to say it until they take me up on it. I mean, how much more would President Biden be able to bring together this country if rather than picking issues that I think divide us along generally, R versus D, he called together Speaker Pelosi, Minority Leader McCarthy, Schumer, McConnell, got him into a room, and the 5 of them said, we're not leaving until we agree, the 5 of us, on a national strategy toward dealing with cybersecurity. I know those 5 people would be able to get it done, and I know they'd be able to sell it to the rest of us. Instead, I think we have an incredibly disjointed reaction where the Department of Defense is trying to harden their stuff, and Congress is trying to harden their stuff, and JBS is trying to harden their stuff, and your company is hopefully trying to harden your stuff, but probably not doing a very good job. We need a national commitment, and I get no true sense of leadership on this in this area.
From your bills, your accomplishments during the past 30 months, what's the Butcher Block bill or act, Butcher Block Act? And do you think it'll have an effect on meat processing?
So we've got a lot of problems in the meat processing space. And part of it is just, I think in general in this country, we have been too willing to let the large grow massive. To me, a free market is many buyers, many sellers. And I think a lot of this merger and acquisition activity, whether it's in the tech sector or the cell phone sector, or the meat processing sector, actually is injurious to the marketplace. I don't think we should have 4 meat packers control 85% of the market. I don't even think they have to be nefarious actors for that to be dysfunctional. And so the Butcher Block Act would make it easier for small and regional processors to expand their operations. Again, try to get more of a many buyers, many sellers situation. And on Friday, the Biden administration announced that they are basically I introduced the Butcher Block Act with Democrat Abigail Spanberger from Virginia. On Friday, the administration announced that they're doing it on their own through some of the COVID dollars. And I think it is going to have a big impact. If we could get about 6,000 head more a day of processing capacity in this country, we would have a far more functional marketplace, and I think that proposal will do it.
Now, the last year and a half has been have included two of the most unusual events in recent history.
Tiger King.
Yeah, Tiger. That was
Okay.
that qualifies as unusual. Yeah. But the pandemic in general. I mean, what do you think government has learned, or what would we do? What would you like to think we might do differently if we were facing that challenge again?
I hesitate to answer because I'm not, you guys know me, I am not some dog whistle blowing partisan. So, please listen to my comments in that, I get it, the Republican Party does not have a corner on truth clearly. And in fact, there are some really disturbing problems within the Republican Party. Let me start by saying that. But I would say that I think we have learned that with the numbers, that government intervention that goes too far breeds dependence rather than independence. You know that the workforce participation rate, that's the ratio of adult Americans who have a job. You know that the workforce participation rate today in this country is 60%? It's the lowest it's been since women entered the workforce. And I don't think that work is punishment. I think work is opportunity. And you know that if you are a family of 4 in this country who have 2 adults who are unemployed and 2 kids, that since the start of the pandemic, we have provided your family $110,000 in relief. And I do think the early interventions were incredibly important. I am not saying that government intervention is wrong. What I am saying is that we want, I think, to be even more careful in the future in asking ourselves, is this relief truly temporary? Does it breed dependence? And is it the right way to go forward? I think we are getting too, here's my one sentence answer. I think we are growing too comfortable with legislative proposals that have $1 trillion in the title.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. The other thing that was kind of unusual that happened in the last year was perhaps the most unconventional election since 1876, or maybe not to skip through 2000.
Right.
There was some. So our former president was active in public again this weekend. We see a continual effort to curry favor from the former president. How do you feel about the state of the Republican Party, about the approaching the election, how that's going to play? Can you maybe give us your thoughts on the election controversy and where we go from here?
Well, maybe I'll start at the end and work my way backwards. I was in London for a town hall meeting on Friday, and it didn't make me popular in the room, but I'm just going to be clear. Donald Trump is not becoming the president of the United States next month. And I don't care how, in what kind of a high regard you would hold Mike Lindell. The guy makes a hell of a pillow. But he's not right. He is not right about the size and the scope. I want to make it clear there were clearly irregularities. They happen in elections. And there are clearly some things we need to do at a state-by-state level to improve the operation of our elections. I think South Dakota does a hell of a job. But so many of the pieces of evidence that people will point to say, well, clearly there was a problem in Georgia. How could these down-ticket Republicans get more votes than Donald Trump? How is that even possible? That in and of itself is proof that some of these ballots were marked only for Joe Biden. Well, it happened. I suspect you believe in the South Dakota elections. I know I do. I got more votes than Donald Trump. Mike Rounds got more votes than Donald Trump. Public Utilities Commissioner Gary Hansen got more votes than Donald Trump in this state. And it's not evidence of a problem. It is, voters are going to make their own decisions. And I see a lot of people in this room who've lost elections. You don't have to like the decisions they make, but we can't just view every loss as evidence of corruption. And so I'm going to be dedicated to improving election integrity. At the same time, I'm going to try to talk about these issues in a responsible way and not try to claim that elections were stolen, because they weren't. Now, with regard to the role of President Trump, the guy is an incredibly talented leader. I mean, there are things, when he's focused, there are things that he can get done that simply other people can't. And I get a little more than a little concerned when I think of how many Americans believe that fealty to a person rather than fealty to a set of principles is what should define a good Republican. To me, I love the Constitution, I love this country, and I love conservative principles. Anybody who wants to join with me in those three areas sounds like a pretty good Republican. Now that I've gotten myself in a whole hell of a lot of trouble, what else you got there?
Right.
When I beg for the pity applause, it's really best not to give it to me.
Yeah, I would say that is actually one of the things that we love about you. One of the reasons that you have the support you have in South Dakota is not because everybody agrees with everything you say, but because we know that what you will tell us what you believe, and you will stand for it. And I certainly, for one, appreciate that. It makes it a lot easier to keep track, frankly. Just a slight change of subject here as we're running out of time, but you have a young family, you've got school-age boys. How does your lifestyle as a congressman impact your family?
I think it impacts the boys. We've got three sons, 16, 13, and 9. I think it impacts them only a little bit. I mean, shocker, on a Friday night, the teenagers don't really want to hang out with me. And there are times when Jacqueline and I have to tell them we're hanging out as a team, even when they want to do something else. So I don't know. And of course, kids are resilient and they're busy and they've got baseball practice, and Max has got a full-time job giving tours at the world's only corn palace. And they're busy and they're really, really good kids. And of course, when I'm gone, I'm busy. I mean, I'm so busy that I'm not thinking about the dishes that are piling up at home. So honestly, I think the only person who gets pinched on a pretty regular basis by this arrangement is my wife, who is working as many hours as I am, trying to grow a business, keep people employed, and serve her clients. Is also trying to make sure that the 9-year-old doesn't, eat paste or, and it's remarkable. I mean, this is a team sport in so many ways, and it is. People talk about what an honor it is to serve our country, and I would say that is most certainly true. But it's an even greater honor for me. I hope you won't be offended for me to say that I get to take that journey with her.
Yep. I'm one of your Twitter followers. So I've read some.
I want to thank both of you.
Yes, right.
For your engagement.
I can tell you, in sort of researching some of this stuff for today, I did make the mistake though of going into some of the comments, I mean, this world has changed a lot. The role that you have with social media has been totally revolutionized in some ways. I find it shocking that people in South Dakota, and particularly people from all over the country, will write foul and hateful messages on your Twitter feed, or I can't imagine that they would say those things in person to anybody. But
you haven't been to the Kransberg parade then?
Yes,
you have actually. Yes.
Yeah. Now that you mention it, I don't think they'd say it sober. So it's just, but how do you deal with that venom and personal attacks? And how do you deal with what's your whole social media philosophy and strategy? How are you gonna turn that into a positive?
It almost doesn't bother me at all. And I just think I won the lottery, right? I mean, genetically, we're all built in different ways. And I don't lose sleep over that, over people making fun of me. I suppose middle school hardened me up, but I'm joking. I had a very good time in middle school. But it does bother other people, though. I will tell you, the 23-year-old staff assistants that answer the phone, it bothers them. My family members, it bothers them. My friends who are very close to me, many of them, it bothers them. I have had some of them tell me that they have had to get off of Facebook for, I'm taking this month off. And it's not because people are mean to them. It's because there's a general sense of venom and violence, not even just to me, right? It's obviously broader than that. I mean, people love me, but it is, to me, it does not bother me personally. It bothers me deeply what it says about our society. And I don't know how much longer we can have the greatest country on earth when civil discourse barely seems to exist.
So I'll just wrap up with kind of a nice little farewell question here. I appreciate everybody staying late and the time that we have to talk to you, and I appreciate you being so generous with your time. But members of the House of Representatives serve a 2-year term, and your term will be up again next year. Are you planning to run for re-election?
Given the fact, I will only tell you to start with what so many of the people in this room have told me when I have solicited them for donations. What the hell? The election was just 6 months ago, right? I love this job. I'm incredibly frustrated by it. I don't think it works like it should, and I hope this doesn't come across as too egotistical. But part of what keeps me in the fight is when I talk to my knucklehead colleagues. And I just know that if the good people get so frustrated they walk away, we are ceding the field of engagement to the knuckleheads. And if I walked away right now, I don't know if I would ever forgive myself. Because I do think we are at a bit of an inflection point in this country where we are trying to decide what is the role of decency, what is the role of civil discourse, what is the role of having principle-based policies. And I don't know how that battle's going to turn out. But if I walk away because it's uncomfortable, or if I walk away because it's not as lucrative as my previous employment, or if I walk away because it means I have to miss a few family things, and if that battle doesn't go the way that I want it to, I don't know how I could ever live with myself. So I'm going to keep fighting. And to the extent that any of you can help foster productive civil discourse with your families or online or in a wonderful service club like this, please do, because it makes a pretty big difference.
Thank you, Congressman Johnson. Thank you, Joel, our Rotarian of the Year, for leading the conversation. And thank you for joining us on this Monday. I would ask that you return next Monday. We're going to have the Chief Innovation Officer from both Midco and the City of Sioux Falls talk about the recent $500 million investment into our infrastructure, what that means for you, your business, and for our region. So look forward to having you back. In the interim, have a great week, and Rotary is adjourned.